All right, everybody, welcome back to the Overwatch Collective podcast with Greg. I am with one of my buddies from the Marine Corps, Nick Abeda. We met in Camp Fuji, Japan, while we were both deployed in the Marine Corps. Nick did kind of the same contract as me, 6 years reserve with the 2 years inactive reserve in the United States Marine Corps. Like I said, we both met. I think it was a T.O.C. I don't even know what it stands for. Something unit leadership course. I don't know
Yeah.
what it was. So we were able to get connected through social media and then reached out to you after learning about ketamine assisted therapy. Nick's married with a kid in nursing school. So we're going to talk about being deployed with the challenges that go along there, ketamine assisted therapy, the pros and cons to that. I have not done a podcast with anybody that has actually done that, so I'm looking forward to that. Before I have you introduce yourself, just going to throw our new statistic number out there for therapy. So Talk recently opened up therapy as of May 1st, 2025, and now we're at $285,000 spent on therapy costs. 62 people have gone through the Overwatch Collective to get connected to therapists. And this last one was first responder who we got connected to a West Coast post-trauma retreat and funded $2,500 for that first responder to attend. So pretty cool. If y'all are listening to this, continue to donate, support, and thank you. We appreciate you. That wraps it up. Nick, I'm done talking for a little bit. I would love for you to do a quick little introduction of yourself, brother.
Thanks. Yeah, well, it's awesome what you guys are doing because my wife's a therapist, and so it's good to know that you're taking the initiative and trying to get people connected with therapy and different types of therapists for free. At least that's from what I understand. Especially since we're going to be talking about ketamine, that's something that's huge because most insurances don't cover ketamine yet, and it can be very, very expensive and out of reach for a lot of people. And even like I had told you before we started, I was only able to do it every few months because of how expensive it is. We had to do one, then save for a couple months before I could do another one. Um, I mean, depending who you talk to, it's kind of recommended to do a session like once a week if possible, but maybe once a month, once every few weeks is kind of ideal from what research is showing. But for me, it worked every few months, and I think I don't think it matters as long as you're doing it and putting in some good work with it. So yeah, that's awesome.
Sweet. Yeah, and so before we get into the how it actually worked for you and how it was beneficial, and the costs and all of that, um, tell us a little bit about yourself. Married, kid. Why did you join the Marine Corps? What was your MOS? Best worst part of being in the military, and then nursing school. Just give us an update.
Yeah, I had wanted to enlist as long as I can remember. Me and my childhood best friend, he enlisted right out of high school on an active duty contract, ended up becoming a UAV operator, and then what is it like? It's called like a special operations capability specialist, I think, with MARSOC. Like they're not raiders, but they attach to MARSOC and do other kind of stuff with them. So he was able to attach to them as in one of those billets. But I had gone to college first, and in my second semester of college, I decided to enlist because I was seeing him do all of it, and I was like, this sucks. I should have done it initially like he did. So I enlisted in my second semester of college and had the plan of becoming an officer and doing reserves, doing college, and then doing T.O.C and doing it that way, which didn't work out. Yeah, so I enlisted as an 0811, which is a field artillery cannoneer, and my unit was out of Aurora, Colorado, because that's where I'm from, Parker, Colorado. Did a couple years with them before I moved out to Idaho for school, transferred to BYU, Idaho, and Fox Company 223 was the nearest unit that I was willing to join. So I joined them, which is a part of our 2nd Battalion, 23rd Marines infantry unit, and started drilling with them in 2017. And then it took them a year to get me orders to go back to the School of Infantry to become an 0311. And then I went back to the School of Infantry as a corporal. And for everybody else who doesn't know how that works, like that's pretty unique because you do that right out of boot camp usually. But and then yeah, did that 2-month course, got married the week I graduated from the School of Infantry the second time, and then 6 weeks later is when our unit activated. So yeah, the whole first year of my wife and I's marriage was spent apart besides those first 6 weeks, which sucked. Like, didn't know how to be married, like, wasn't really learning how to be married together. So a lot of it was just arguing and like just not communicating well because we'd been dating for a year and a half, hadn't lived together because we were part of the LDS church. And so like that was kind of like a weird thing to try and figure out. But once the activation was over, we that's like kind of what we considered our first year of marriage was after that because we moved back to Idaho so I could try and finish school. My wife had graduated right when we had activated, so I missed her college graduation, which sucked even more. That was another factor. That was just like another thing I missed out, or starting from the get-go, just missing out on things. So she graduated from college, and then so we moved back so I could try and finish. And then I just kept drilling with Fox until my 8 years were up. And in that time between activation and my contract being done, I had decided to try again to become an officer. And I had worked with the OSO, the officer selection officer in Salt Lake for a year and a half before I finally got selected. And I was supposed to ship in January of 2022. And then at last minute in like November, December, I just like reality kind of hit me and I was like, I'm 28. My ultimate goal is to be a doctor. Like being an infantry officer is not going to help me become a doctor any faster besides being another point on my resume. So had a really hard talk with my wife and with the OSO, just like, is this what I really should do? Like, is it really worth it to just add a little bit more of this type of experience to my resume? Ultimately decided no, like time to take school seriously because up until that point, like since I had started college, I had just not taken it seriously at all. I was trying to balance being a reservist and trying to do a STEM major, which was a nightmare for me. Like college has been the hardest thing for me that I've ever done. Like throw anything that the Marine Corps done at me, or throw anything the Marine Corps has thrown at me, way easier than college was for me. For some reason, I struggled super hard. But then looking back in hindsight, it's like, oh, well, I also had all this mental health shit going on that was not being taken care of, which was a huge factor too. But now I finally got into nursing school, which is I'm using as a stepping stone to med school, and I'm crushing nursing school. It's actually surprisingly easy compared to what I've heard about it and what people make it seem. But I think that's mostly part of because of what I do for work. I'm an ER tech in one of the University of Utah's ERs. So like this first semester, every time my wife sees me just watching TV or doing not schoolwork, she's like, shouldn't you be studying? I'm like, I'm telling you, this first semester, like studying is going to work. So, but I'm sure next semester we'll pick up a little bit. Quick, rapid summary there.
Yeah, very cool. And that's so like kind of similar to me. Like when I went to the police academy, like I pretty much failed everything in high school and like college, right? Like I was not meant to be a student. And somehow I got second out of my academy class in academics. And like everybody was like, were you cheating every single? And I'm like, no, I swear to God, like I actually enjoyed it. So it seems like nursing school is probably a little bit easier for you too, also because you're passionate about it and you know it's a stepping stone to get to doctor, which is pretty cool. And I'm glad to hear that because a lot of people kind of underestimate the reserves, where it's like you're not only doing the 3 days or the 2 days a month. Like there's like that admin shit that you got to take care of in between, on top of your school or on top of your civilian employment, on top of your family. And then there's all the fucking government mandated training that everybody loves to do, entering your drills, doing all these little courses. So it's definitely an underestimated part of our profession, I think I would say. I kind of do want to start. So talk about, just rewinding a little bit, some of the challenges that you and your wife faced with the activation and being gone for what was it, 6, 7, 8 months, something around there. What were some of the challenges?
So when we found out we were getting activated, we had only been dating for like 8 months, and my wife was born and raised in Utah, raised in the LDS church. Her entire family pretty active in the LDS church. Me being a convert to the church and just growing up very differently and having different experiences already at that point in life. Like she used a term not too long ago. She described me as rough around the edges just because I was not what she had always pictured herself ending up with.
Hmm.
Like I had not served a mission, and that's a huge thing, right, for the LDS church. So me not serving a mission, me being in the military, me not being raised in the church, not caring what comes out of my mouth, and things like that. Like, yeah, we had been together 8 months, but still she was kind of hesitant of like, should I marry this guy? Then get this slap in the face of, oh, we're getting activated and deploying, and the activation itself is going to be a year, was just another factor for her to consider. And it must have not bothered her too much because she still decided to marry me. So even from that point to actually getting married before the activation, there was still just this hesitancy she had, and to see, kind of like if she wanted to take on this challenge and see and deal with this. So that I think from her perspective, that was kind of what it was. And then from activating on, it was just tough, just because we were in Okinawa and her being in mountain time, just complete opposite time schedules,
Mm.
maybe get an hour to communicate a day if we were sticking to a schedule. And most of that time was filled with arguing and just not really actually talking to each other. Is more just staring at each other on FaceTime or just kind of silent phone calls from what I remember. That's kind of just how it went for the whole activation. And then when I got back, it was like an initial like honeymoon type phase of like, oh, it's over. Let's be married and let's just live our lives. Then a little after, it became pretty clear, like, oh, we don't know how to be married. I mean, like, we don't know how to live together. So that was a whole new set of challenges,
Hmm.
and trying to figure that out was rough. And I don't think if we had just both had the patience or and care for each other that we do, like no way we would have actually made it. But I also attribute it to her being the type of person who was working to become a therapist and now is. But in me, kind of, my perspective was kind of just like, no, like we got married and we decided to do this, so like let's just figure it out. But yeah, it was tough. I couldn't imagine doing it with a kid either. That would be a completely different ball game too.
Yeah, yeah. Thankfully, I was not married at that point, nor engaged or anything like that, and it was still difficult, you know. And I know so many other people that were on that deployment. Granted, like we had a bunch of free time. Like we were going out, eating all the sushi, drinking all the sake. It was nowhere near as like a deployment where you're going to be like off comms for weeks at a time or a combat deployment, right?
Yeah,
Still to see people having those kind of challenges with their significant others was pretty eye opening. And I just want to say, like, I appreciate you sharing all that and being open and honest about it. And I think everybody listening to this knows that you and your wife are not alone in those struggles in deploying, and this community is tough because normally what do we see? We normally see marriage deployment to get the BAH money, right? Because you get the dependent. I'm sure people made jokes about that with you. And then there's a lot of problems on deployment. There's the Jody back at home, or usually you get back home and it's a divorce, and then you're like, okay, now on to my second marriage. And that's just kind of how it is in our community. But
yeah.
I'm really glad to hear that you two are still together and made it work, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think actually, in all honesty, the last year has actually been the hardest. At least it seems to me like the hardest time frame in our marriage, just because there's so many different like having a baby. I don't think having a baby added stress. It just like it just shifts a lot of dynamics. But we've just had a lot of stuff go on the last year outside of our marriage, just like in other parts of our lives that have impacted us like collectively, and that's been hard on us. But we're like at this point we've been married 7 years, so our communications improved a lot. Like I'm able to listen better than I did on deployment, and I've grown up a lot more than I was then. So
Mm.
um
So, what advice would you give for a service member, active duty or reserves, and maintaining a healthy relationship with their spouse, significant other on deployment or some type of mobilization?
I feel like a lot of dudes are super stubborn when it comes to listening to their wives, and they think they know best. um And despite how like cliche it is to say that your wife knows best, a lot of the time, like more than half the time, I would say she probably does. That's definitely true in our case because there's times where she'll tell me how I should go about something or how something should be done. And I'm just like, no, I'm going to do it this my way that I think is best. And she's like, I don't think that's going to work or whatever the case is. And then I do it and I mess it up or it doesn't work out. And then I do it the way she told me initially and then it works out fine. So being able to just humble yourself and listen to your wife is such a huge thing. One, they'll feel appreciated, so that eliminates some friction of possible arguments. Also, whatever advice she gave you,
Mm.
that is the right way to do something, then you just do it right the first time and then you can move on to whatever's next. But yeah, I'd say just humbling yourself is usually the best answer to most marital problems.
Got it. Got it. I appreciate you sharing that. And what was the best and worst part about your time in the military?
Look, in hindsight, for sure was that activation because it was just like the chance to do that as a reservist was, at least for most of the dudes our age, was unprecedented. So like looking back, I wish I had just taken way more advantage of it. Granted, I was pretty new to the unit still. I was thrown into a team leader billet into a platoon I had where I knew nobody. So there was a lot of my entire platoon didn't know me, didn't trust me. Was like this dude did not do his time as a lance corporal in the infantry. So there was kind of like some like just contention towards me, I think, until I proved myself. And that was a personal struggle for me, that first half of that deployment, because I was pretty isolated. Weekends I was spending by myself for the most part because it's like I hadn't built relationships with these guys for years like they had with each other. And I was content just kind of hanging out by myself. I didn't want to try and, I'm not a person to try and force my way into a friend group or go try and tag along with in a group where I wasn't invited to something. So, but once I started like proving myself and showing that I was like, oh, I'm capable of being in this position, then that's when they started opening up to me and like letting me in a little bit. And then after that activation, that's when things really took off for me as far as being in the infantry and being welcomed. So, but yeah, that was probably that was the best part, hands down. And then even I tell this to a lot of dudes like who were reservists and got out when they were done drilling, but it's like drilling in your first 6 years compared to drilling non-ob is completely different. Like when you drill non-ob, it is so much fun because you're choosing to do it. You're
Mm,
not being forced to do it.
yep.
Like I remember one of the first field drills we had in my non-op time, it was to 29 palms, like for a drill from Utah. So that was a 5 day thing. Took a bus out the first day. But normally 29 palms is you dread it. But it was like actually I was actually looking forward to it and just hanging out. Like at that point you're just hanging out, getting paid to hang out. Yeah, so very different. That and then so that non-op time was also just really fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, 29 pounds. I mean, that was hot desert, everything, but I swear that's some of the best training and some of the times where like you look back or you see all these videos on social media of like range 410 or 401 and you're like, damn, like I miss it. Like that was the fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I did a non-ob AT there, and it was a 3 week ITX. And that picture I sent you that you're using for the thumbnail,
Yeah.
that was taken from a video from combat camera of us doing 410 alpha. Yeah, that whole AT was just so fun because it was just yeah, didn't have to be there, but was choosing to be there. And then since I was at that point, I was the most senior sergeant in Fox Company, and so that comes with its own kind of privileges. And then feeling like I had my own group of friends at that point. It was yeah, at that point it was just so much fun.
Yeah, definitely more enjoyable. Last thing with the military, really quick, curious your opinion, and then we're going to move on. Obviously, we're still seeing a problem with suicides in the veteran community. What is your opinion on what we can do to reduce the suicides?
I'd say actually getting together with everybody because it's easy. Everyone he always says to like, well, let's get together and do this at some point, and it just never happens. And then before you know it, somebody slips through the cracks, and that's when you hear about a suicide. And then you get together for their funeral, and you all see each other, and then you realize like how much you missed each other. This happened. This just happened to me and to Fox Company. Like, granted, our guy actually it was a murder suicide. It was a domestic dispute type of situation. But I mean, essentially, it's the same thing, right? Essentially, but we all got together for his funeral a couple weeks ago, realized like how much we all missed each other, how much we had been, how much we all needed to be around each other because there was 10 of us that got an Airbnb the night before his funeral, and that was like the greatest time I've had in a long time. Um, and it wasn't even rowdy. Like all of us are close. You know, I'm 30. Most of us are close to 30, and that within a couple years, up and down. But it wasn't rowdy. It was just sitting around and talking and just being idiots, like talking like idiots and able to just relax and not worry about anything else. But we realized like, no, we actually need to do this more often. And hopefully like we're working on it and seeing like when the next time we already can get together and do something is, but hopefully we can actually do it because that way you can actually keep a regular eye on people. And even just those little get-togethers could be what they look forward to get them to the next one or the next one, and then do enough of it, and then by then hopefully they've been able to get help or they are able to handle whatever's putting them in that situation to even consider suicide. So you actually have to do it. You actually have to get together and see your friends and not just say you're going to do something, because that's when dudes slip through the cracks.
Yeah, no, I agree. I appreciate you sharing that. And that's one of the challenges with people getting out of the military, right? It's like you're used to having the weekends together, you're waking up at 05 to go do PT after drinking the night before, and as much as you want like your DD 214 and you're done, it's like that transition period is difficult for a lot of people. So I completely agree with you. Anything else on the military or at all before we kind of move on to the next topic?
No, I'm good with moving on.
Cool, cool. So when we start talking into your journey of therapy and ketamine assisted therapy, I don't know, where do you want to begin with that? When did you realize that you kind of needed to go to therapy? How did you get introduced to ketamine assisted therapy? And maybe we'll just start there.
At the foundation, like being Hispanic, therapy and like for as a cultural thing is just not a thing you do. Granted, like I'm not like super Hispanic or I'm like super proud of my heritage or anything, because it honestly doesn't really matter to me. But that is a part that I've noticed in my family that is really prevalent, is like therapy you don't do. So if it wasn't for my wife, like I really don't think I would have ever even sought help. It was 100% my wife who was like, you need to talk to somebody or see somebody, because like your patterns of like self-sabotage, mainly in school, because it was just like the first 8 years of college was literally just repeating courses over and over and over again, trying to raise my GPA to
Mhm.
get into a nursing program, and there was just no way it was happening, like no way. So it was mainly affecting that, which then affects any chance of a career I have, and then stability for me and my wife. So she was like, you need to do something about it. And at this point she graduated from her master's program in social work and was in her intern year, not intern year, but like her post grad kind of supervision time frame, kind of like a doctor in residency. Like they're doing everything on their own, but they still have to get it signed off and stuff by a supervising therapist.
Gotcha.
So she had been working at this practice here in Utah, and where she had interned also. And this is where she met the therapist that I did ketamine with. And my therapist, the lady who ended up being my therapist, her and her husband started their own private practice, and her husband was an anesthesiologist. And so they, in their practice, that's where were doing ketamine assisted therapy. And my wife had sat in with patients who had been doing ketamine assisted therapy, but she hadn't done it herself. So she was like, I want both of us to do it.
Mm.
One for her, so she could see what it's like, see what her patients are experiencing, so she can help them, navigate it more,
Yeah.
or navigate it better, and actually be able to understand kind of what they were experiencing. And then for me, she was also like, I just legitimately think you need it. Like I think you would benefit from it. And I was super hesitant because I had never done any drug before. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. I was like, all right, I'll just do it. Might as well. And so we did that first session together, just sat in the same room with each other, had no intention of working on anything. We just wanted to sit there and experience it. And it was like one of the funnest experiences I've ever had. It was just because it was so new to me. I'd never experienced anything like that before. And we were just laughing the whole time, like giggling at each other, because we did it the first, I've only done it through IV infusion.
Okay.
So it's can be titrated very quickly. Either you can decrease the dose if you need it, or increase the dose if you need it, and you feel it pretty quickly. And so I'm just feeling it and like hallucinating that I'm flying through space, and like I'm in this comfy recliner, and it feels like I'm sinking into the recliner, like into the ground. It's hard to describe, like, honestly, but I
Yeah.
remember like hallucinating, going up on the walls in the chair, just a wild experience. And then the second session we did together also again, and it was like the complete opposite experience. It was just like they started the pump, and then you feel it kicking in, and then like in the snap of a finger the session's over, and you're like, there is no way that was 50 minutes. And so we both, and it was kind of odd that it was like that for the both of us, and we left just feeling like worse than we when we started, because we were like, that was not what we were expecting or even wanted. So it was just super odd. And then every session after that also was just different. There was never a session that was the same as the one before.
Interesting.
Yeah, but
Question for you really quick, just pause you. So you said it was through IV, correct?
yeah,
So what is that process? So you go into the office, they throw the IV in, and then do they have to wait a little bit until the session starts? Or was the IV in while you were doing your session? What did that kind of look like? Just for the people that might not be.
Yeah, so that third session is when my wife was like, okay, I think since we're spending so much money on this, they charged 400 per session. And again, remember these sessions are spaced out at least a month and a half in between each other. So that third session, she was like, okay, since we're spending this money on this, you need to go in there intentionally and do like you need to focus on what you need to be working on. And that was when we decided like that this lady would be my therapist because she was also my wife's mentor. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine with that. Like she also offered because there was, I think, yeah, it was actually right at the end of that second session when we were recovering. She had come in to talk to us, being like, hey, how was your session? Like, haven't seen you guys in a while. And we had told her, like, at that point, I had actually done the work to start seeing somebody. But the place I had inquired with, they had like a several month wait before I was going to be able to get in with somebody. And we told her that, and she's like, "Oh, that's ridiculous." She's like, you can see me if you want." And it's like, "Yeah, like,
Oh yeah.
let's start next week." And I was like, "Yeah, that's a no-brainer." Even though she like, she was my wife's mentor, like that didn't bother me. When you work in healthcare, like that, those dynamics and relationships, like, don't really seem to matter. So we didn't have a problem with it. But yeah, the third session, her husband came in, poked me with the IV, got it all set up, started the drip, and then that's when she came in and session like timer starts or whatever for the session. And then yeah, within literally minutes, like he set up the because he injects the ketamine dose into a bag of saline. But you got the saline started, injects the ketamine in the bag to start mixing and stuff. As soon as he injects it, like within a couple minutes, you notice you're like, oh, yep, there it is. I don't know if like anybody who's had surgery or been under any anesthesia before, like you notice it pretty quickly. I mean, ketamine is used in the OR and even in the ER. We use it in the ER to consciously sedate patients to if they have broken bones or something that need to be reduced. That's what we give them. So, but yeah, so then the rest of the session, they adjust the drip or the dose depending on how much I'm feeling it. If he'll come in 10 minutes in and be like, hey, do you need more or are you good? At that point, I was like, yeah, I need more because that was like, I could feel it, but it wasn't getting me to a point where I was like ready to just talk about anything.
So really quick, that kind of brings up a question. So with the ketamine, I guess that's where ketamine assisted therapy comes in. Without the ketamine, do you think you would have been able to open up and talk and reap the benefits of therapy? Or did the ketamine definitely help?
For me personally, I think the ketamine was the deciding factor or the major factor that made a difference. Because I had done a couple sessions with her before the ketamine assisted sessions and kind of just doing talk therapy and EMDR, but it didn't seem to be really doing too much. But also, I don't really know because I didn't give it an actual college try of doing EMDR because it was just like, well, why don't we just try ketamine assisted? And I was like, yeah, sure. So it wasn't like we had done all these other types or we had tried all this other stuff and then did ketamine. It was just like, well, let's just try it and see how it goes. And then I just kept doing it, and it worked.
Gotcha.
So
And then
yeah.
so you said he came in 10 minutes later and he's like, "Hey, do you need more? Are you good?" What kind of feeling or how did you feel? How did you know that you needed more or you were good and you were ready to essentially go on with your therapy session?
So a lot of people have asked me if is it like my brother-in-law, my wife's brother. He hasn't tried it yet, but we've talked to him a lot about it. He's just kind of hesitant about it. But he's done a lot of talk therapy. And he was like, a big concern he had was like, I want to have control of what I'm saying. Like, so is it like being drunk? And I'm like, no, it's not like being drunk because at least for me, when I'm drunk enough, like I don't control what I say. Every time I've done ketamine, I'm completely in control of what I say. I definitely am more like more willing to say things. Whereas if in just a normal talk session, like if I felt uncomfortable talking about something or I was hesitant about saying something, who knows if I would say it. In ketamine, it was like, nope, I'm good saying it.
Mm, okay.
But I would, as far as knowing how much you need, like if you need more, like for me, it was almost like, am I still aware like where I am or like how do I describe it? Because I also don't want to make it seem like you're getting so high that you just don't know anything.
Yeah.
So if I knew like if I was aware that reality is still reality, I knew I needed more. Like if I knew my wife was in the other room and like that I had work tomorrow or the next day or whatever, I needed more. Then I'd get more, then it would change to be like, I don't, it's so hard to describe. But then I like if reality definitely did not seem like reality, that's when I knew I was in a good spot.
All
Yeah.
right. And this would be like a check-in every 10 minutes or so during your session. So you'd be talking to your therapist and then would kind of do like a random check-in and be like, hey, FY, like, are you still feeling good? Do you want to proceed or do you want more kind of thing?
He would only check in like in the first 10 or 20 minutes and then maybe one more time 20 minutes later. It wasn't like every 10 minutes because the sessions were only an hour, but yeah, he I think from what I remember he would do like a two-time check-in.
Okay. And then these doses, one of the things, and when I first heard about ketamine assisted therapy, being a police officer and still in the military reserves, my first thought was if I take a urinalysis or if I get involved in an officer involved shooting or get into a vehicle collision and I need to take a urinalysis and I pop for ketamine, what do I say? You know, where do I go from there? So, what are your thoughts on that? What have you seen or what have you heard?
So I started all this after I was fully discharged. I want to put that out there. Like that's also why I didn't seek help while I was in because I didn't and while I was working on my officer package because I was like I don't want any of this. I don't want to deal with any of it if you know. So when I was fully discharged and got my honorable discharge, that's when I was like now I can do all the mental health work I want.
Mm,
I don't know how that would affect it as far as like a legal or administrative from those perspectives, but as far as like popping on the test, I'm not 100% sure.
yeah.
Like doing it IV, I'd be fine 4 or 5 hours afterwards.
Okay. Okay.
They advise you to not drive, the rest of the day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But like 4 or 5 hours afterwards, after he stops the pump, then I
Mhm.
was good. And as far as I know, like working in an ER, when people come in and we have to do a urine tox screen on them, I'm not gonna actually say. I don't know if ketamine's on there. I can't there's a lot of things that are on there, and I don't know if ketamine would fall into one of the categories that is on there. So I'm not 100% sure. But as far as seeking, like for you as a law enforcement officer, like I don't see why treating anything you would need to be treated would be looked down upon. But then again, there's the military who also is like, hey, you should get help. And then you get help, and they're like, okay, well, we're kicking you out now. So I don't know if that's the same way with law enforcement.
Yeah, and it's probably one of the reasons, just like what you mentioned, right? Where it's like, oh, cool, I'm out. I got my honorable discharge. Now I can get the mental health resources and take care of myself. That's pretty fucked up.
Yeah,
Like, it sucks. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons why our service members, whether you're active or reserve, are not taking care of themselves and getting the help that they need
yeah,
and essentially spiraling downhill. And if you think about it, reserve contract like what we did is 6x2, right? Where if you're a police officer, a firefighter, EMT, dispatcher for that matter, it could be a 20, 25, 30-year career. And if you're not getting the help that you need until you're done, you're screwed. And
yeah.
it's just crazy to think that you said that. Like the moment you said, "Oh, I finally got out. I got my honorable discharge. Now I can take care of myself," is that's a problem.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And one of the guys we drove up, we carpooled to the funeral in Idaho a couple weeks ago, and one of the guys I was riding with, when I went back to Fox to do non-op drilling, he was my APL. He got assigned as my APL, and so when word got around that I was joining the unit again, he texted me immediately and was like, "Hey, just found out I'm your APL. Just so you know, I had an attempted suicide attempt. I had a suicide attempt not too long ago, and the unit knows, and they're dealing with it, but I'm probably getting discharged." And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, one, you're one of the best dudes in the unit. Like, but just because of that, like, they're gonna kick your ass out, and in quite literally, in a literal way, they're removing you from a support system. Yeah, super fucked up. And thank God he actually sought help and got better. And he's a firefighter, so it's kind of like same community, but now he's thriving because he actually went and got help. But yeah, the fact that people feel the need they can't do that while in because of the repercussions of it is ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the leading causes of suicide in our community, right? Where it's like the struggling in silence, and like everybody says, "Oh yeah, go to the VA or talk to your SARC or whatever the acronym is that you see in the urinal." But and then the same thing for law enforcement and everything, right? It's like, hey, we have our employment assistance program, our peer support, but like, and I don't know what the solution is to this, but like, you will never fully have everybody in the community trusting the confidentiality of saying, yes, I'm suicidal, I'm having these thoughts, these ideations because of the repercussions, right? Like, you
Yep.
literally have someone that attempts suicide in the military and then they kick him out, which is like, okay, you're just going to kick that person to the curb. And then he's not going to get checked in on. He's not going to get any of the resources. He's away from the unit. He's away from the buddies. Like, that's just a recipe for disaster, you know?
Yeah. And then what I also hate is like somebody does bring it up. Like somebody mentions like, hey, Gunny, I'm not feeling too hot. Like I kind of want to kill myself. Seriously. And then Gunny is like, well, you're a bitch. Like it's like, okay, Gunny, fuck you. You're lucky that you have no idea what is actually going on or like how this actually feels. The people who say, who tell people like, oh, you're a bitch, just suck it up, or it's like you're lucky that you don't know what being suicidal or being depressed is actually like. That's the problem also.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important. And that's why I love our podcast and kind of like where we started is having people on that have had suicidal ideation, suicide attempts, like where they were at the bottom of the barrel, where they had a plan or they actually executed the plan, but they had a failed attempt. Thankfully, they're still alive and with us. But to be able to come on and talk and share their thoughts, like we need more of that. Like I think that's the kind of stuff and that we need to get out there. And also like you coming on and talking about how the ketamine assisted therapy helped, because somebody out there could be like, hey, I heard ketamine assisted therapy is great, but I can't do it because of XYZ. And then they come on, they listen to you and they're like, oh, actually I can, or maybe I won't pop, maybe I can actually get connected to you. So I think that's very important to get all these podcasts to have you on, and I appreciate you coming on. And we did kind of get off on a tangent there a little bit, but a very important tangent.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
Getting back to ketamine assisted therapy. So one of the questions that I have, and I'm sure some of the listeners, especially the ones that are veterans, have is, did you pay out of pocket for ketamine assisted therapy? How much was it? And did any of the VA benefits cover it, etc.?
Oh, I did pay out of pocket, but that was just, I think, mostly circumstantial because it was like it's who my wife works with,
Mhm.
um, or worked with. That was just like that was just right in front of us. And that was something we were just willing to pay for.
Yeah.
We were able to pay for it. That was before we had our baby. It wasn't necessarily an issue for us at that time. Now, like no way we be able to do that with a baby and with where we're at right now. I know like the University of Utah has the Huntsman Mental Health Institute, which is like it's in the University of Utah Health's network, like completely separate mental health entity, and they do ketamine infusions also. I actually haven't looked into if they take insurance or not. I think they might just because it's part of that Huntsman Mental Health Institute. I believe the VA does also they do help with costs and working with different insurances. I'd have to look into it more though, because I'm not 100% sure. And then as far as just private practices go, if you're paying out of pocket, it just depends on the practice, kind of what route they're doing it. So if they're doing IV infusion or if they're doing injections or lozenges or if they're prescribing it to take home and do it intranasally, because that's also an option. Because my wife has also, in her time as a therapist, she's contracted with multiple places and moved around different places that do ketamine, and they all charge different amounts from like 200 to 400 per session, and they all do it different ways also. She's tried every way so far, I think, besides intranasal because that's a prescription. But as far as the advantages of each, like lozenges, she's done that. She actually zoomed with her patients over during their session and while they take a lozenge. It's a lower dose. It doesn't hit as fast. It doesn't hit as strong, but it kind of just more relaxes you, it gets you able to talk about difficult things. Infusion, I'm still um, gonna advocate that that's the best way because you're able to adjust it immediately. It actually takes effect pretty immediately. Whatever you're adjusting, you can stop it on a dime. Injection is kind of the sketchy one for me because, and my wife experienced this firsthand. But if you're starting an injection regimen, the first one you might end up wasting your $300 or $400 on your session because they don't give you enough. You barely feel it, and then you're kind of you feel fucking scammed because you just didn't get enough out of your session.
Got it.
That's just kind of the way injection is, because it's like you need to figure out what your dose is.
Correct.
And
So,
then, you got to spend more money for more sessions to figure out what your dose is. Or on the other hand, if you're unfortunate enough in your first session where you get too much, it's still not going to be effective. And now you're in the K hole, which I haven't experienced. My wife has, and I've watched it, and it looks terrifying. So another thing to look out for, and this relates to my wife's experience, is like the kind of the credibility of where you're going, and that's kind of with anything related to healthcare, right? But she was contracted at this place. I was doing it, and on a Sunday they had an employee day, so employees would get a free session, free ketamine session. This wasn't a therapy assisted because you can still do ketamine in an office, but not talk to a therapist and kind of just ride it out. Not ride it out because that makes it sound like a bad thing, but just get your dose and lay there in there, whatever kind of vibe they have set up, and just process whatever you need to process without talking about it. A lot of people choose to do it that way, and that works for them. And so that's kind of what that day was about. Like, get your dose and process whatever you need to process by yourself. The provider wasn't on site. The nurse that was administering the doses, she gave my wife her first dose. My wife goes into her room, gets relaxed, lays down and everything. The nurse comes in, gives her her second dose like 20 to 30 minutes too early, because the nurse went in another room and gave herself her dose so she could get out of there earlier. So my wife got way too much ketamine in way too short of a time. And the only reason I was able to even help was because this time I actually decided to just go with her for some reason. Like, most of the time I hadn't gone. I dropped her off and then she would Uber home, usually because I had work or something. But that time I was like, no, I'm gonna go and just wait there, so then we don't have to worry about getting rides or anything. My wife had to use Siri to call me and tell me to come find her room, because she had so much ketamine she couldn't move, and she was in the K hole and was just processing all of her trauma all at once. And
okay.
yeah, it was horrible. And since then, actually, I don't think she's done ketamine because it affected her that much. And now it's obviously right.
Make-
But it's like, if that's happening, if nurses and providers are just not being responsible, like, run away from that place. Because a huge part of my experience also, I think anyone's that actually has seen benefit from it, is the environment you do it in makes a massive difference. It's like, I do know Huntsman Mental Health Institute. I had a coworker, a nurse who had done several sessions with them. Nothing negative happened, but it just wasn't an ideal environment because it was more like an infusion center where you're separated by curtains from the people next to you. And so it's not really an environment where you're just kind of isolated and need to do what you need to do. Where I did it, you'd be in your own room in like a super comfy, nice recliner. They'd have blankets or whatever. It'd be dark. They'd put on like ambient music, or like, kind of just vibey ambient sounds, and kind of just make it how you wanted it. And I think that also plays a huge part of it. Another thing when you're on ketamine is, like, one thing that my therapist would ask pretty frequently, like, do you feel safe? Because you don't, if you're in a good spot, you kind of don't know what's real or not. And so asking, like, do you feel safe? If it's yes, then yeah, keep going. If it's no, then we need to fix whatever is not making you feel safe. And if that's not being isolated or being around too many people in a single room, that could be an issue. So looking for a place where you think the environment is also good is a huge thing to look out for.
Interesting. Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
you hearing that. That's definitely something that have not heard of, the environment with ketamine assisted therapy and the feeling safe and all that. Very scary what your wife went through.
Yeah.
Very, very scary. So that's great. I appreciate you giving some things for people to look out for and all that. Anything else that you want to add on ketamine assisted therapy for the audience, for the listeners?
Despite how expensive it is, like, I would say whatever your financial situation is, like, I would actively try and, if you have to save up for it, actively save up for it if you think you need to do it, because it was life changing. Like, 8 or 9 sessions, I think it's 8 that I did. 8 sessions literally flipped my life around. And what is that? A couple $1,000? Like, couple $1,000 was worth being able to actually function on a regular basis and being able to actually progress. not be stuck in the same things I'd been doing or the same patterns I had been doing for 10 years. And that's something I didn't even mention either, was like I had undiagnosed PTSD for 10 years before I started ketamine or even really started consistent therapy. I had tried to talk to a few people before and they kind of mentioned it like this kind of resembles post-traumatic stress. And I was like, whatever, like the situation that it stems from, I have always told myself like that is not severe enough to have PTSD.
Right.
But because being in our community, it's like, no, I didn't see IEDs go off and see all the shit that a lot of our peers did. And even for you in law enforcement, I'm sure there's a lot of that too. But like, I haven't done anything like that. Life, like normal life situations, you don't know how you're going to react and how your mind is going to process it. And so, yeah, I had undiagnosed PTSD for 10 years and 8 sessions put me in full remission. Like, I haven't had an issue with it since probably my fifth or sixth ketamine session. The last few sessions I did were shifting focus to like more current issues that I was dealing with. But so I'd say even less than that, 6 sessions was able to do it.
That's awesome. That is
Yeah.
awesome. That's, I mean, I appreciate you sharing that. And that just makes me think of how many people in our community have undiagnosed post traumatic stress disorder for that reason alone of like hey, I did a unit deployment program to Japan and we didn't really do anything. Like, I've never been shot at. I don't have combat experience. So now I ain't going to even put this on my VA claim, or I'm not going to even mention PTS because the other people have had it worse. That's probably
Yeah.
a majority of our people in our community have that, I'm sure.
Yeah. And whenever I like literally the other day, ketamine got brought up because sitting around at work, they were talking about a patient they had that had to get ketamine for a bone reduction. But, I turned around, I'm like, we talking about ketamine? Because I
Yeah,
love talking about it. And
yeah,
because a lot of people, they have heard, like, especially in the medical field, I've absolutely heard of ketamine being used for therapy and for depression and PTSD, anxiety, and et cetera. But so I started talking about it, and this group of coworkers I hadn't talked about it with before. So it's kind of like this. I'm repeating myself from the other day, which is fine. But just every time I talk about it, I'd preface it with like, yeah, I had PTSD undiagnosed for 10 years, was not correlated to anything in the military. Like I preface that because I also think there is this stigma of like every veteran is broken
mhm,
because of the military. Like, no, we're broken from other things,
yeah,
not just the military. So it was even before I joined the military. So yeah, I want to throw that out there too.
yeah. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on, sharing and everything. Yeah, this is huge, and I've heard people talking about it on other podcasts. And before we hopped on, like I was Googling and ketamine assisted therapy and reading some articles and everything on it. But nothing beats being able to ask you questions and having somebody that's open and honest about it and being like, hey, this is like literally life changing, and now other people in the community can listen to you talking about it. If somebody is listening to this and wants to reach out to you and has other questions, are you cool with people getting connected to you? They can reach out to me and then I can connect them with you via email or something.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. Appreciate it. Thank you. Very nice of you. Sweet. So that kind of wraps up everything I have of you, keeping it right at like that hour-ish mark here. Is there anything else that you want to add before I kind of ask our final question that we ask all of our guests?
Off the top of my head, no, nothing. I think I covered it all.
Cool. Sweet. I think you did too. So our last question, our motto at the Overwatch Collective is one more is one less. Comes from an Army combat veteran who lost more friends to suicide upon return stateside than actually in combat. And it's stuck. It's on the back of our t-shirts, our challenge coins. It's everywhere, and we love that motto. So what we do is we always ask our guests at the end of each episode what one more is one less means to them. Take a moment, but I would love to hear what one more is one less means to you, brother.
I would say just being able to show that that experience from in one aspect of life you can give to somebody else who doesn't have that experience and can be a huge guide to them. And so in this case, telling people that how effective ketamine actually is and how impactful it could be in such a shorter amount of time than going to therapy for years and years and not really seeing that much of a change can actually hopefully will give somebody listening the hope that if they're right on the edge of thinking about like getting their affairs in order and writing notes and giving stuff away and all the classic suicide preparations. Hopefully, like they hear this and well, maybe there's one more thing I can try, and I think it is the thing that will help them. And yeah, it's pricey, but more than worth it.
Got it. Cool. Perfect. I appreciate it once again. Thank you for Thanks for coming on, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I surely did. I'm going to go right at the caption right now, cut a few clips, and then this episode will drop on Friday, May 16th. So Friday, May 16th, I'll post it, have it uploaded. It'll be on all streaming platforms. It'll be on the Overwatch Collective app. And yeah, Nick, I appreciate you coming on. That wraps it up, everybody. Nick already said if you want to get connected with him, he's more than willing to connect with you via email. Reach out to us and I can get you connected to him. Nick, once again, brother, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Take care and God bless America.